At dinner with my husband's friends, they just asked, "So how did you two meet?" An innocent question, or so I thought. But then he opened his mouth, and the whole table went silent. I just sat there, shocked, fighting the urge to flip the table right then and there. Want to know how I handled it in the middle of that fancy dinner party? Keep listening. The drama was spicier than the pasta I hadn't even finished. Me and Grant, my husband, were invited to dinner with two of his old friends, Tyler and Sophie. The Italian restaurant was the kind of place you had to book a month in advance, with golden cinematic lighting and waiters in crisp white shirts and bow ties gliding around with trays of champagne flutes. I'm not really the type who enjoys that kind of fancy-on-purpose vibe. But Grant loved it. He works in banking, and you know how that goes, always needing to show the world he's successful, at least on Instagram. The truth is, I really did try to fit in. I nodded along when Tyler told stories about their old college basketball pranks. I gave Sophie a polite smile when she showed off her new handbag, even though it was obvious she just wanted me to notice the glittering logo on the table. I wasn't close to them, but I didn't dislike them either. Everything was fine. Until Tyler, completely clueless that he'd just pulled the pin on a grenade, turned to us and asked, "So how did you two meet?" A totally normal question, right? So normal that I already had a cute answer lined up in my head. Something about us bumping into each other at a bookstore, fighting over the last copy of a classic novel. I was about to say it, lips already parting, when Grant, of course, jumped in first. He leaned back in his chair, took a sip of wine, and said in that annoyingly confident tone, she chased after me, practically begged me to notice her." I froze, caught between a smile and choking on my own breath. Tyler burst out laughing. Sophie covered her mouth with an "oh my god," but her eyes were glued on me, curious. I tried to convince myself he was just joking. But nope. Grant started piling it on, like he was doing stand-up at an open mic. Back then I was busy, not even thinking about dating. But looking at her, kind of pathetic. I thought, well, might as well do a good deed. The whole table let out that awkward laugh. You know the kind, not because it's funny, but because no one knows what else to do. I sat there, my face burning, gripping my water glass so hard I was sure I'd snap it in half. I looked at Grant, the same man who used to whisper, "I love you" to me every night, and wondered, is this really my husband? I almost cut him off, but Sophie had already raised her phone. She pretended to fiddle with her Instagram story, but the camera was aimed right at me and Grant. A tiny flash went off. I knew exactly what she wanted, a viral clip to show off. My chest tightened, not just from Grant's humiliating words, but from the thought that this scene could be blasted to hundreds of people online. At this point, you're probably thinking, if that were me, I'd just get up and leave. Trust me, that thought crossed my mind at least 3 times, but sometimes your instinct to fight back kicks in faster than logic ever could. I set my glass of water down, took a deep breath, and grabbed the Sprite sitting right in front of me. A line from some movie I once watched popped into my head. Sometimes silence isn't golden, it's carbonated. Before Grant even realized what was happening, the entire glass of Sprite was pouring over his head. Cold soda streamed through his hair, soaking his navy blue shirt, blotching it like some abstract painting. Tyler's jaw dropped. Sophie let out a sharp "Jesus!" and the surrounding tables all turned to watch, like they'd just scored free front-row tickets to a live drama. But I wasn't done yet. I turned to Sophie, snatched the phone right out of her hand. She squeaked, "Hey!" But too late. I tossed that thing straight into the breadbasket. It landed with a satisfying thud, right between the focaccia, garlic butter, and her overpriced iPhone. Now a tragic little combo platter. The whole table went dead silent. Grant sat there, drenched, eyes wide like someone had just dumped a whole bucket of reality on him. I looked at him, then at them, and let out a sharp laugh. "Yeah, you were right about one thing. I did do a good deed, by showing up here tonight for myself." I stood up, grabbed my purse. My heart was pounding, but the humiliation from earlier had flipped into this strange, liberating relief. Like finally hitting the flush button after an unbearably long day. Whoosh, and everything's clean. As I walked away, I caught the table next to us whispering, "Oh my god, that was savage." Someone even gave a little clap. And you know what? In that moment, I couldn't have cared less whether Sophie ever got her phone back or what excuse Grant was about to spin for everyone. I only knew one thing. Tonight, I reclaimed my own microphone. But hey, let me ask you. If you were me, would you have just dumped the drink on his head, or would you have taken it even further? Drop a comment. I'm dying to know. Walking out of the restaurant, the smell of garlic butter still clung to my hair like a reminder. Tonight, I'd been put on display just for people's amusement. The streets of Austin were buzzing, loud like the whole city had just won a championship game. Meanwhile, I'd won only one thing. I would never again sit quietly while someone else held the mic for me. My phone buzzed like it had a fever. You ruined my image. Grant's first text, followed by a barrage. All my friends were there. You lost control, you embarrassed me. If you've ever dated someone obsessed with reputation, you know that phrase, my image, is as vital to them as oxygen. By the 10th line, I actually laughed. He was texting like I'd tossed the entire restaurant into a washing machine, when in reality it was just one glass of Sprite and an ego that no longer had a seat at the table. I called a ride straight to my mom's. Not because I was weak, but because I knew if I stayed, Grant would come find me and I'd be forced into a role I wanted no part of, the apologetic wife trying to keep the peace. My mom heard my voice over the phone and hit me with 3 oh my gods in a row. Come home, honey. I've got the porch light on. My mom's place is in a quiet neighborhood, oak trees swaying like the kind of gentle whispers I desperately needed. The second I walked in, she shoved a towel into my hands and gave me that look. Like, whoever messes with my daughter is a dead man. My brother Jake didn't even bother with words. He just pulled on his jacket, shoved his car keys into his pocket. Give me the address. I'll go have a word with him. That old military edge was still there in the way he stood, like a walking monument to the word protector. No, Jake. I placed my hand on his arm. You don't need to play hero tonight. I don't want anyone laying hands on anyone. He bit his lip, pulled his arm back, and gave me a grudging nod. Mom glanced at me, then opened the cabinet and pulled out a cookie tin. The smell of sugar and vanilla filled the kitchen, softening something tight inside me. My phone was still buzzing. And now it wasn't just Grant. Tyler called, then texted, "Hey, he's telling everyone you were too drunk." I replayed the Sprite glass in my head and snorted, "Drunk on carbonation, maybe." A second later, a name from Grant's side of the family lit up. "Heard you went crazy tonight?" I sighed. The thing about gossip and baking powder, they both rise way too fast when the heat's on. I was about to power off my phone when a name popped up that made me freeze. Sophie. The message landed like a cautious tap on the shoulder. "Can we talk?" I glanced at Mom, mouthed, "I'll be on the porch." The night air brushed against my face, cold as ice. I opened the text. Sophie wrote, "Grant is pushing me to post the clip from tonight. Says it'll prove you were the one causing the scene. If I don't post it, he'll claim I'm taking your side." A hollow weight spread through my chest. I remembered the satisfying thud of her phone hitting that breadbasket. Turns out the basket wasn't deep enough to swallow all the fallout. "What do you want me to do?" Sophie texted again. "I don't want to get dragged into this, but I also don't want to lie." My reporter brain automatically framed the headline, "When the villain wants the mic." I leaned against the porch rail, listening to Jake pacing the living room like a caged lion, while Mom opened the cupboard again just to close it. Grown-ups have their own rituals for unloading worry. I typed back, "Do what you feel is right." Then added another line, slow and steady, like I was editing the closing sentence of an article. "If you post it, just describe exactly what you saw. No more, no less. Let people see for themselves." Sophie went silent for a few minutes. In my head, it was like hearing the soundtrack of some indie film. Simple, spare, but hitting the right note. Then the screen lit up. "I get it. I won't turn anyone into a joke just for views." A little sun rose inside me. I didn't need someone to take my side. I just needed the truth not to be twisted into a prop. From the living room, Jake called out, "Hey, you doing okay?" I laughed. "Okay, in the sense of surviving a tsunami without getting my feet wet," he muttered. "Say something normal, would you?" I shrugged, settling onto the porch steps. My mind drifted to my work, writing about life, about the tiny things people usually overlook. For years, I'd been photographing pretty breakfasts, interviewing folks who opened cozy little restaurants, telling stories about details that make life feel lighter. I never imagined I'd end up writing a story where the villain was the man lying next to me at night. Maybe that's just how some professions bleed into how you live. Maybe that's why I deal with messes through words and perspective. Not everyone gets it, but it's who I am. Grant kept texting, like a speaker stuck on repeat. "You need to call me. You embarrassed me. Everyone saw you lose control. I set the phone down on the wooden table, looked up at the night sky, and thought of a post I once read on Reddit. A girl wrote about how her boyfriend always blamed her whenever he messed up in front of people. Back then, I left a comment like, "Leave while you can." Reading it again now, I wondered, if it were you, what would you do when blame texts came pelting down like hail? Smooth talk your way through to keep the peace, or pop open an umbrella and stand tall? I tilted my head, inviting you to drop your answer in the comments of this very story. Mom opened the porch door and sat beside me. "I'll make lasagna tomorrow," she said, as if a layer of cheese could patch over all the cracks from tonight. For the first time all evening, I laughed out loud. "Okay, but don't tell Aunt I came here crying." I didn't cry. Mom gave my back a gentle pat. "Not crying, that's already a victory." Sophie texted again. "He's pushing. I told him I'd only post if the caption was accurate. He's annoyed. I'll leave the story up for 24 hours then take it down." I replied, "It's your call. I don't control your story." Then I added, "Thank you for thinking it through." Strangely, that gratitude wasn't about whether the clip might work in my favor, but about the fact that in that messy, dark room, someone had chosen not to pour gasoline on the fire just to warm their hands. Jake poked his head out again. "If he shows up here, I raised my hand. "I know. But tonight, nobody needs to put on another show." He clicked his tongue, nodded. "Some battles you win by not fighting. The ones who crave explosions might be disappointed, but believe me, peace makes its own sound." I closed my eyes, letting the night breeze flow through strands of hair still carrying the scent of the restaurant. Grant could keep spinning the story, slapping the crazy label on my forehead if it suited him. He could call every single person, replay every memory, beg them to believe him this time. But if you've ever stood in front of a mirror and told yourself, "I wasn't wrong," then you know exactly where that steadiness comes from. It doesn't need a crowd to nod along. Before heading back inside, I sent Tyler one single text. "I didn't drink a drop tonight." No exclamation marks, no emojis, no fluff. He replied, "Got it. I'll tell a few people." I felt lighter, not because I needed someone on my side, but because at least, in all that noise, there was one person actually listening with both ears. That night, I slept in my old high school bedroom, walls still taped with a poster of some band nobody remembers. I thought about tomorrow, but didn't map out some grand revenge. I just set my alarm like always, as if to tell life, I still run on my own schedule, and I'll tell my story in my own rhythm. I had barely shut my eyes, not even a dream in sight, when pounding shook the door, loud and relentless, like the cops raiding a house. The clock on my nightstand blinked 12:47 a.m., and my heart was racing faster than the doorbell shrieking through the night. Mom shot up, hair a total mess, while I yanked on an old hoodie. Jake, of course, went straight for the door, barefoot on the wooden floor, shoulders squared like he was about to step into a boxing ring. The pounding came again, then Grant's voice ripped through the air. "Open up! I know she's in there." Jake yanked the door open, and honestly, the two of them looked like roosters about to charge each other. Grant was in a wrinkled dress shirt, tie hanging loose, eyes bloodshot. Jake's voice was ice. "What do you want?" Grant didn't even hesitate. "I want her out here. She needs to apologize, publicly, right now." You know that feeling when a villain shouts lines that sound straight out of a bad Netflix episode? That was Grant. I stood behind Jake, equal parts scared and amused. Jake clenched his fists so tight his knuckles cracked. I poked my head out. "Grant, the neighbors are sleeping. You trying to star in the neighborhood watch alert?" But of course, Murphy's Law had other plans. Porch lights started popping on all down the street, curtains cracked open. And, I swear I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The guy across the street already had his phone up, recording like he was live streaming for National Geographic. The suburban mating call of two deranged males. Grant roared, "You humiliated me in front of my friends. You owe me an apology, publicly, in front of everyone." Jake let out a dry laugh. "What are you, the CEO of Public Apologies, Inc.? I had to cut in. "Jake, stop. I don't want tonight turning into an episode of Cops." Grant lunged forward a step. Jake squared his shoulders, and if my mom hadn't shouted, "Stop it, both of you," the front porch would have turned into a boxing ring. And right then, ding, a notification went off. Turns out, the neighbor across the street had already uploaded the clip to our neighborhood Facebook group. Late night drama. Who even needs Netflix? I could hear Mom's phone going ting 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 non-stop as comments poured in. "Team wife! kick that guy off the block. And even a flood of freshly made memes. Can you imagine? I hadn't even sorted things out inside the house, and the entire street was already weighing in. I'd become the accidental lead actress in the neighborhood's online soap opera. And the weirdest part? Reading those comments actually made me laugh. Someone wrote, "The cops should be paying admission for this show." Another chimed in, "Girl, don't apologize, dump him, and that tie." Grant, of course, wasn't laughing. He just shouted louder, "This is all lies. The whole neighborhood's against me." I locked eyes with him. "You're only making yourself smaller, Grant. And trust me, the internet's memory lasts longer than most marriages." He shook, then stormed off, his shoes smacking hard against the concrete path. Jake slammed the door shut, turned to me, and muttered, "If I'd hit him, I'd be in the paper tomorrow." I chuckled. "Jake, you're already gonna be in the paper tomorrow, but under neighborhood hero." After the chaos died down, I sat in the kitchen, hands wrapped around a mug of hot milk, my head a tangled mess. I thought, let Grant scream, let him try to snatch the mic, but I wasn't interested in playing defense anymore. I wanted to go on offense, my way. The next morning, with sunlight spilling across the porch, I went back to our apartment. Grant wasn't there. The living room was a mess. Beer cans, jackets tossed around, and his beloved PlayStation lying abandoned like an afterthought. I started cleaning up. Every one of his things, from that ugly striped tie collection to the stack of unread fitness magazines, went into cardboard boxes. I even folded his clothes neatly, paired up his shoes. I wanted it to be tidy and piercing. Then the idea hit me. I grabbed a stack of sticky notes and a marker. On each note, I wrote one of the insults he'd thrown at me like daggers. She begged me to notice her. Slapped on a dress shirt. I only married her out of pity. Tucked inside a shoebox. No one else would want her. Slid between his music CDs. I left my mark, so when he opened each box, he'd be betrayed by his own words. I loaded everything into a rental car and drove straight to his mother's house. She opened the door, staring in shock at the stack of boxes. I said only one thing. I'm returning it all, intact, to the family. Then I turned and walked away, leaving behind a warehouse of toxic memories, now neatly boxed up as an inheritance for his own bloodline. Driving back, I laughed to myself. Not the gloating kind of laugh, but the kind you let out when you finally aired out a room that smelled of mildew for years. A whole chapter of my life was now folded into cardboard and sent back to where it belonged, no longer inside my heart. And if you've ever wondered whether it's worth the effort, packing every wound into boxes, trust me, sometimes it's the only way to remind yourself. They belong to the past, not the present. After boxing up all those toxic memories and delivering them to Grant's mom, I thought maybe, just maybe, I could finally breathe. But life, like a drama-addicted screenwriter, decided my break wasn't in the script. Just a few days later, I got a wedding invitation from my best friend. Big, dazzling. The kind of event where everyone shows up in their finest dress. I walked into the ballroom wearing a red dress I'd kept for 2 years but never dared to put on. That night I thought, if I don't shine today, then when will I? Friends swarmed me. "Oh my God, look at you." And for a moment I felt like I'd finally stepped out from under Grant's shadow. But peace never holds its ground for long, does it? Just as I raised my glass to toast the bride and groom, who showed up at the door? Yep, Grant. In a dark suit, hair slicked with gel, looking like some desperate background character trying to force his way into the frame. I nearly choked on my appetizer. At first, he played the role of misunderstood husband, almost too smoothly, smiling at guests, shaking hands with relatives, even accidentally walking past me with a polite little nod, like, "See, I'm civilized, I'm decent." I might have bought it if I hadn't noticed his second then third whiskey vanish in under an hour. You know that feeling when you're staring at a firework that hasn't been lit, but you can already hear the faint fizz? That was me, sipping white wine, waiting for the boom. And boom it came, right when the MC invited guests onto the dance floor. Grant, instead of dancing, snatched the microphone out of the MC's hand. Picture this. A man convinced he's a Netflix stand-up comic in the middle of a wedding, starting off with, "You know, my wife, oh wait, my ex, she..." The entire ballroom froze. And me? I wanted to crawl under the nearest tablecloth. He rambled on about how I had no manners, how I made up stories just to humiliate him. The disco ball was still spinning, the music had cut out, and Grant's voice echoed through the hall like bad karaoke in an empty bar. Guests whispered, a few cringed on my behalf. I sat there, my brain racing through 1,000 scenarios. Should I just chuck the wedding cake at his face? But then came the twist. The kind I didn't even see coming. One of the bride's friends, who happened to live in my mom's neighborhood, suddenly shouted, "Everyone, look at this." And within 30 seconds, the projector lit up the entire ballroom with last week's scene. Grant screaming for a public apology on my mom's porch. Jake looking like he was about to pounce. Yep, the very same clip from the neighborhood Facebook group, now playing in HD for an audience dressed in tuxes and gowns. I almost burst out laughing. You know that feeling when the villain basically slaps himself in the face, on a giant screen, in front of hundreds of witnesses? It's more satisfying than eating the entire wedding cake without gaining a single pound. The ballroom erupted. Some gasped, some clapped, and a few guests whispered, "Oh my God," so she was telling the truth. Grant froze, face red like a boiled shrimp, still clutching the mic. He stammered, "This is fake. This is a deep fake." The whole room roared with laughter. And then from the back, an 8-year-old yelled, "Mister, what kind of deep fake has you wearing the exact same shirt you've got on right now?" I didn't need to say a word. Nobody did. The clip spoke for itself. My best friend's wedding had turned into a public courtroom, and Grant had cast himself as the defendant. The venue security moved in, calm but firm, took the mic from his hands, and escorted him toward the door. He thrashed, shouting, "This is slander." But the wedding DJ hit play at the perfect moment, as if hired to roast him. "I will survive." I bit my lip just to keep from laughing out loud. Guests carried on with the party, buzzing with chatter. An aunt I'd never even met patted my shoulder. "Sweetheart, you did the right thing. Don't regret a thing." I nodded, raised my glass, and thought, if Reddit ever got hold of this story, it would be front page hot in a heartbeat. I once read a Reddit post about a wife whose husband trashed her at a family wedding. The top comment said, "Girl, just stay quiet. He'll dig his own grave." And watching Grant get dragged out, I realized that line had never been truer. That night, I danced with my friends, ate 3 slices of wedding cake, and let the gossip swirl without caring. For the first time, I wasn't the side character in Grant's performance. I was the VIP in the front row, watching him expose himself. And if you ask me now, did it feel satisfying to have the whole room witness it? I'd say, maybe not exactly satisfying, but fair? Oh, absolutely. After that wedding, I figured Grant would finally get the hint and disappear for a while. But nope, he went straight to his favorite hobby, turning Facebook and Instagram into his personal pity diary. Every day, a new status like, "Some people don't know how to value real love," or "When you give someone everything, all they return is betrayal." Toss in a few sweaty gym selfies with bargain bin inspirational captions, and I couldn't help but laugh. The kind of laugh you have when someone slips on a banana peel, but still strikes a pose like they're on a magazine cover. Meanwhile, my phone wouldn't stop blowing up. From his main number, his burner number, emails, even random WhatsApp messages from strangers. And all with the same tired script. "You owe me an apology. You made me look like a fool. You need to help me restore my honor." Honestly, if I printed every message and bound them together, I'd have a best-selling memoir titled Confessions of a Delusional Man. At first, I planned to stay silent. But one afternoon, sitting on the balcony with a cold soda, I thought, why should I run around explaining myself? If Grant wants the mic, let him sing. Me? I just needed one knockout line. I opened Facebook and typed, "They say if someone calls you crazy, let them audition for the lead role in their own movie." Then I hit post. No photo, no emoji, no tags. That was it, and oh my God, it blew. Within an hour, over 100 shares. By the next day, thousands. The comments flooded in. "Yes! Girl, this, I need this printed on a t-shirt." One woman I'd never met even wrote, "Thank you for saying what so many of us feel." I was roasted publicly the exact same way. I sat there, scrolling through, laughing and breathing easier. Grant had been screaming with 1,000 words. I only needed one sentence. And as for who the audience chose to listen to, you already know. What shocked me most was how many women slid into my DMs. They shared stories of being humiliated by husbands, boyfriends, even bosses in front of a crowd. They told me my one line made them feel less alone. One wrote, "I've stayed silent for years. Today I copied your sentence and taped it to my office wall." I laughed, thinking, this isn't just my personal drama anymore, it's a global reclaim the mic movement. And Grant? He tried to save face with a counter status. People can manipulate public opinion, but the truth will come out. But the only truth that came out was his friend count dropping, while the comment section filled with laughing emojis. Once again, he'd turned himself into a clown show nobody wanted tickets to. I didn't need a press conference, didn't need a long speech. I just sat in my new apartment, hung the paintings I actually liked, set a tiny cactus on the windowsill, and smiled knowing I'd finally reclaimed the mic for myself. Not with shouting, but with clarity. Ending a toxic marriage never looks like a rom-com. There's no slow-motion walk into the sunset with a perfect soundtrack. Reality was, I ate instant noodles, I had to relearn how to sleep without hearing fists pounding on the door, and I had to get used to silence not being scary anymore. But you know what? Every bit of it was worth it. If there's one lesson in all this, it's this. When someone tries to make you the joke, let them turn themselves into the cheap show. All you have to do is sit back, put your feet up, and enjoy the view. And now, here's the part where I want to hear from you. Have you ever been publicly roasted like that? If someone tried to humiliate you in the middle of a wedding, what would you do? I've told my story, now it's your turn. Drop a comment below, I genuinely want to read every single one. And truly thank you so much for staying with me through the whole story.